Hi there, welcome to the Lovefly Fear of Flying Q&A. My name's Paul Tizzard. That's all I've got to say about that. Welcome to the session. Sorry it's a few minutes late, but there was two crises I had to deal with. One is I didn't have a coffee, and that's pretty much the worst thing that can happen to anybody, especially me. And secondly, I couldn't get the damn thing to work. So as soon as I pressed to go live, I thought I'm really smart, and then it just said you do not have permission, and then I had to have a mini meltdown, which I was able to then sort myself out and actually was able to then deliver. So first things first, thank you so much, as always, for all the referrals, all the new people coming through. It's just amazing. And it's just staggering to see so many people coming through every week, all these new people coming in with their stories and their questions, etc. And we don't know where you found us from. Sometimes we know. So various places we obviously know that people come through the podcast, which is great, the Lovefly podcast, but also we see people coming from the Instagram page, which is at Lovefly Help. The Facebook group obviously is Lovefly. We also see it from Twitter and sometimes through through the YouTube account as well, which is also called originally Lovefly with some numbers after it. I don't know why it is, but I have to have a look at that. So some of our podcast interviews are video style, and they're on the YouTube channel as well. And others are not; they're just audio. But that's just the the preference on the day of the people we're interviewing. But also sometimes, if I'm having a bad hair day, then I don't necessarily want to be on video. So, massive welcome to the new people. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody who keeps helping each other, answering questions, posting questions, showing support. The thing that comes up time and time again in this group, and it's something that people often remark on. In fact, I was doing a podcast interview this morning, which will be coming out Wednesday, and Avril Kenny, who's in Australia, and she's going to be talking on Wednesday about her journey and how she's been helped, etc., etc. And one of the things she remarked on, which I thought that's so true, and it was a really good reminder, was the positivity that exists within the Lovefly community. That compared to some other groups, apparently, I don't know because I'm not in them, that people want to help each other get on, and there's a real sort of positive camaraderie that everyone wants to help everyone. So thank you. That's all I can say. That's not all I can say. Well, I'll say some other stuff. So I had a few questions come through. Now, a lot of these, as you can imagine, are answered in much better detail on our 30-day programs, on our webinars, in our instant webinar and stuff, and our occasional courses that we run. But I'll do my best to answer them. Right. So there's a couple of long ones here. Let me just see if I can get, there is it gone. Okay, so I love it when someone says asking for a friend. Right. So this question that came from Emily. Emily said, any tips for someone who has a hard time with the sensations of flying? Stomach drops, vibrations, turns. I'm sure you could guess I'm not a fan of roller coasters either. Now, quick point here. I don't see these things. This is what I'd call, with absolute respect, Emily, this is a false comparison, because roller coasters have a much more dynamic movement than you'll ever get on an aircraft. Aircraft are actually, if you're looking for excitement, that isn't the place to get it. Not in a commercial aircraft. It's pretty samey, predictable. It doesn't do the incredibly crazy maneuvers you do in a roller coaster. Nothing like it. We might imagine it does, but it is actually very, very gentle. Okay. So when we're looking at the comparison between the two of these, we have to be really careful because they're not the same thing. So first thing I'll say about it is that most of what you imagine is happening isn't happening. And we can train ourselves out of this. So the things like the stomach drops, the vibrations, the turns. I mean, it's a dynamic, moving machine. It weighs several hundred tons. It's going at hundreds of miles an hour. can imagine the amount of power there. You know, we got to expect some vibrations and stuff like that, because that's evidence of power. So rather than thinking that these are bad things, this is proof of like the literal strength that's holding us up there, you know. So that's maybe a way that you could think about that. Drops and stuff like that, they often feel like drops to us in our stomach because our stomachs are not calibrated to actually what's going on. You know, we're ground dwelling bipeds. You know, we're used to walking around, and we have a sort of sense of what things are and how things work, and you know what movement feels like. And if we're in a car, we can see the horizon, and we go over a bump, we can our brain can quickly calibrate. Oh, that was this. It wasn't a plummet 50 feet. It was just a half a foot. You know? But in an aircraft, we've got nothing to calibrate against, because you can't calibrate against the cloud. And we're also rocking along at 400 or 500 miles an hour. So you just everything you're feeling is incorrect. And that's not you, that's all of us. So the only way around this is, first of all, to accept that I'm being fed a load of rubbish. So what I'm experiencing isn't necessarily what's happening. So that's a fact. If you can just start to think about that as an idea, like what I think is happening versus what is happening are not the same thing. I am dealing with incorrect information. We're starved of information around us in the flight. And so our brain goes, well, I know what that is then, and just makes stuff up, fills in the gaps. So that's the first thing. The second thing is understanding the stages of flight. After a while, you'll eventually be able to just not so you won't notice these things, but you won't notice them the same way. So you'll think, oh yeah, that's 1,500 feet. It always feels like it drops then. And it becomes like a thing that you just kind of tick off, like on Pete Higgins' checklist, you know, that you can just tick it off. All right, that's the near plummet feeling that isn't a plummet, but feels like one. Tick. So it just gives you some sort of rationale to then think, okay, I know what's happening. So these things can help, because if part of our brain knows what's going on, we can rationalize it, it can help the other part of our brain that's going, what the hell? I don't know if that's what your brain says, but that's, you know. So the next question in the Facebook thingy, I can't find it now. Where is it gone? Why is it under pressure? Can't find anything. Why is it can't find anything under no pressure? Okay, so Karen Neff, you've asked a bunch of questions. And how does lift work on takeoff versus cruising? That's a massive question. The pilots do a much better job of this on the 30-day program, but let me do my version of it. So first of all, lift is a kind of a misleading word, because it's actually more suck. Because when I used to think about aircraft flying, I used to think, if there's air going over the wings, we get to a certain speed, then there's enough coming underneath to lift it up. But actually, that's not strictly true. It's the difference in pressure between beneath and above that causes it to almost be sucked up. So the lift, if that's the right word, is on the top of the wing, not underneath. It's the difference in the pressure between the two. And this is what creates the lift. So it's a really weird idea. I still find it really hard that someone described it a bit like, if you blow over the top of a £5 note, this is probably too big to make this effect work, but oh, it worked. So if you blow over the top of a piece of paper, so I'm not actually blowing underneath, but did you see that the paper lifted? Because I've changed the pressure on the top. So that's what happens with aircraft lift. If you imagine that, at 180 miles an hour worth of that over the top of a wing, it makes it lift. So it actually sucks it up. And that's what happens. So lift works like that all the time. The difference is when you go from takeoff to cruise, etc., certain things have to change, but it has to maintain the same amount of lift. So it's a continually changing thing. So the aircraft at beginning weighs a certain amount, so you need a certain amount of thrust or power, and you also need a a big fat wing to get off the ground. So you, at slower speed, you need a big fat wing, and you can go a little bit slower. But as soon as you get off the ground and you're starting to climb, you're also burning fuel, so you're losing weight. Therefore, the engines become more efficient. But as you move up into the cruise altitude, in fact, not long after takeoff, you know, all that 1,500 feet where it goes, it sounds like they turned the engines off and it feels like the nose is dropping and we're all going to plummet and die. You know that moment. At that point, they're also bringing in the size of the wings, because you don't need it to be as big and fat. You can have a slimmer wing, and that has to be compensated. So you'll be speeding up slightly. You're changing the angle of attack. So all of these factors are always at play all the time and very, very carefully managed. That's what the pilots are doing, is managing flight. So as long as we've got air over the wings, and I deliberately say that, over the wings going fast enough, we will have lift. So that it's just a dynamic movement of that. So imagine like the bit of paper that I did blowing over the top of there. That's what's happening. So it's always there. What might be considered some of the best safety enhancements over the past 30 years? What a question's that? I don't know if it's the past 30 years, because some of them have been around a lot longer. I think the TCAS, traffic collision avoidance system, you know, so that aircraft don't, you know, like 50, 60 years ago, they didn't have to be fitted. And I don't know when they came in, so I feel a bit of a numpty here, so I don't want to give facts that are incorrect. But at some point, when the traffic collision avoidance system was fitted, that meant that even if there's no radar, that the aircraft are sending signals to each other, so they know, so that you don't get those air conflicts, because if there was to come anywhere near each other, it's a long way away from that. But even as a last resort, you've got something that will say climb or descend, so that aircraft don't go into each other. That's one of the things I like. I like the fact that you can do automated landings, you know, so when it's used to, I remember coming into places like Gatwick and Heathrow when it was really, really foggy, we'd have to wait or go and land somewhere else because we couldn't land with certain aircraft types. And now more and more airfields around the world, you can land in those sort of conditions where we literally couldn't see anything, you know. Aircraft can land, they can land automatically. I think some of the advancements in the way that it feels inside, you know, the air pressure, like on the Dreamliner, the 787, it feels the air is done slightly differently. It feels different. So the cabin pressure is slightly lower than some other aircraft, and you just get off feeling slightly less tired. That's how I feel. The other one has to be engine improvements, because now you don't need 4 engines to fly routes that you used to have 4 engines. Although they still, because we're keeping safety, we always have to be within 3 hours of somewhere to land with 1 engine. But the advancement, the reliability on those, that's got to be up there with, you know. Oh, the other thing is which aircraft is it? I think it's some of the newer aircraft. They have this soft function. It might be the Airbus that's got this thing that makes the turbulence. So if you encounter turbulence, it's got this sort of automatic facility to try and smooth out the ride a bit. Those are some of my favorites. I mean, that lots of people have different things. There's probably a lot. In-flight entertainment, I think, is pretty cool. That's, you know, so the fact that you haven't got to just sit there and look at the back of someone's head. You can actually watch films and videos and podcasts and all sorts. You know, I love all that. Yeah. So I hope that answered. So Geneva, she's asked a question here, which is, my good, this is a lot of questions here. I'll do my best. I'm flying. So I think there's a sort of I'd sum up this. I'm flying Southwest in the month. Great airline. After not flying for 13 years. Nervous about all things going on late with the airline. Pilot strike, hitting the light pole, someone airdropping. There's the depressurization incident a few years ago. My question is, how nervous should I be about all this? In the Southwest, not good. No, it's a bloody brilliant airline, right? Full stop. There's a lot of nonsense in the press. I've been listening and following for a while since booking my trip in June. The logical brain has Paul's voice. That's me reminding me that all those incidents, everything was fine. because flying is very safe and well regulated. The issues with staff being unhappy worry me, though, because I've witnessed workplaces where people are unhappy, or disgruntled at their job, and poor morale is always followed by a reduction in quality. Thank you. Hoping to post my own story soon, of course. So there's a few things here that I would pick up on. So poor morale is always followed by a reduction in quality. That's a sort of a generalization, don't mind me saying. And I think that we have to be really, really careful those sort of phrases, because we're talking about commercial aviation here. We're talking about a highly regulated industry, people that don't take chances, where safety comes before anything else, because without safety, there is no business. There's a lot of nonsense in the press. There has been for many years. It's always been a topic, and it's not that things haven't happened occasionally, but sometimes the reporting is nothing short of, I don't know what the word is. I know what I want to say. The swear word. It's just ridiculous. I mean, literally, I've seen stuff where it'll say chaos and crash and turbulence causes and I read the article and go, what a load of rubbish. And honestly, we have to be really, really careful. So Southwest, a great airline, they have set the example for many other airlines in terms of kind of a no frills approach, but keeping flair and personality. And I would fly with them or any airline that comes anywhere near the airspace that we're all currently living or working in. So I don't really worry about any of these things. And yes, of course, the staff grumbles and stuff like that happen, but not to the extent where we have safety issues. So I'll just be really, really mindful. Don't believe any of the stuff that's in the press and stuff, because it can be a nonsense. And they are a great, great airline. And we are really looking forward to your story and your positivity. Right. Let's just have a look, see if there's anything else that's come up. All right. Right. Okay. So this is a question from Agatha. I spoke to a flight attendant last Friday. He said he once encountered severe turbulence during a flight. He said it wasn't something the radar didn't detect. He wanted to reassure me, to show me that a plane could take that. But in my mind, I think, how often do planes encounter turbulence which cannot be detected by radars? Well, so the first thing is, turbulence is not dangerous to the aircraft. So just because we don't like it is irrelevant. Quite often you can't detect it, because if it's just air, you've heard of the term clear air turbulence. That's deliberate. It's clear air and it's just movement. So the word turbulence, unfortunately, has got a bit of a bad rep. And I said this in the audio book, which obviously episode 69 in the Lovefly podcast. It's just movement. It needs a bit of a rebrand, because air is always moving. And sometimes it's a bit more dramatic than other times. Sometimes you can predict it. As Emma Henderson said in the group earlier, you get some flight weather prediction, but sometimes they're completely wrong because it's based on the mathematical model. And by the time you get there, the air's already moved on. So sometimes you can have a bit of a surprise. But the main thing is, this is not your job. Your job's to fly, book your flight, worry about yourself, get your water, get your food, set out your area, think about how you're going to structure your time and chunk up the time that you're flying. Think about where you're going to, why you're flying. Everything else is everybody else's job. There's nothing to do with you. So whether you worry about the weather or not won't make any difference to that flight. And even worse, if you don't get on that flight, it's going to take off, it's going to land fine. Then you'll be kicking yourself. So this is why these are great questions. So I'm not having a go at you. I'm just saying, these are not our jobs. Our job is not to worry about this. There's flight planners, there's crew, there's pilots, there's air traffic. That's their job. Let them get on with it. You get on with your job of being a passenger and, doing your best to relax as much as you can. And you don't have to love flying just because, when else would you say? I was saying this the other day. I was driving down from North Wales yesterday, and it's like a 4 or 5 hour journey. I was so bored. And I'm sat in this seat and I get to drive for a bit, which is obviously meets my control needs. But It's so flipping boring. And so you sit on an aircraft 4, 5, 6 hours. Oh man. I mean, it just does you nothing, doesn't it? So, you don't have to love it. And it can be really frustrating. And, when else do you get a chance to just sit there though? So it's up to you. Take some things to distract yourself, chunk up the time, like Pete Higgins says in his podcast, just take your time, enjoy the time, because this is a very rare opportunity that we get to actually just sit and let someone else take care of everything. I'm hoping that answers your question. Doesn't annoy you too much. Right. Any other questions? I can't see any. So apologies if you've posted one and I've missed it. Can't see. I started hearing myself coming back on the Facebook thing. So yeah, if anything's missed, I'll apologize. I'll try and get to it in the comments. But if you miss this and you think, oh, I wanted to ask this, I wanted to ask that, then please post it below and we'll do our best to answer it. But just remember, the thing about flying is, which is why we love doing it, is that it is safe. It's not 100% safe, because nothing's 100% safe, but it's not far off. And I always think that if you're going to go and do something, life is for living, and flying is just a part of that. It's a way to get to places. It's a way to get from A to B very safely. And if you can learn to love it as much as we do, then it can be a fantastic experience. And personally, we're off on holiday this week. So I'm off to Egypt for a week, which I can't wait. And for me, the moment I get to the airport car park, I'm on holiday. That's how sad I am. From the car park, yeah, holiday. Aircraft smells, aircraft, runways, love it all. And that's what I wish, sincerest wish for you all, is that you get to that point where you become boring as me and just love airport car parks. So thanks very much for watching. Hope that was helpful in some way and not patronizing. And like I said, this week's podcast will be Avril Kenny talking about her journey. And next week's, if I can manage to get it edited in time, because I'll actually be away, so it'll need to be sequenced, will be Jamie part 2. Woohoo! So I will see you soon. Take care.